Thank you for being with us today, back here on our Douglas Family History YouTube channel. My name is David Douglas. Today we're going to be talking about the Douglas family in England. We're going back to the place that John the immigrant, who was my first ancestor as far as the step foot on this land that we call today, the United States of America. He came here about the year of 1660 into what they call Charles City County, Virginia. Was transported here by a man named Thomas Callaway. We're going back as far as to his birthplace. We're going back even further into the land of my ancestors, and maybe even some of you that may be following us today. We hope that this will help you, with your maybe family history, looking things up. We've been doing this for about a little bit over 40 years that we've been on this journey, just trying to trace the footsteps of the Douglas family ancestry. So we're going to be talking about the Douglas family in England. So we're going back to England, actually to the London, England area in the 1600s. I'm going to begin there where John the immigrant was born. His father and mother was James Douglas and Wellesley Burtis Brown. They lived in the St. Margaret, Westminster, London, England area. And during this time that John and his siblings was born, and before that time that they lived there for a while, James Douglas and his wife, Wellesley Burtis, was trying to start a family. But according to historical records, in fact, this was the St. Margaret Westminster parish record, church record of baptisms, marriage, and even burials. They had a real tough time, and different even plagues and diseases at different times and epidemics would come on the scene at different periods in London, England. Even from 1636 to 1648, diseases and epidemics would plague the London, England area. James and Wellesley Burtis would have their children, and even some of them would die in infancy. Yet, some of them would live, according to what records that I have found. So let's kind of look, and they had a struggle to try to raise their family. Their first child that was born was named Anne, who was born in 1642. Then they had twins, Lucy and John, born October the 25th, 1646, but they would not live very long. The following year, Lucy died May the 1st, 1648, and John died May the 15th, 1648. Then they had Catherine, who was born 1649. I never found as far as a marriage record or even burial record, so I don't know what happened to Catherine. Then John, who was John the immigrant that I want to kind of call him, who's my 8th great-grandfather, he was born May the 13th, 1651. Now these dates that I have as far as the birth dates are actually the baptism, the christening records. So they might have been at least maybe 2 or 3 days old at this time, so I'm putting their birthday as the christening day because I don't have an actual birth certificate. Then we know that he would end up coming to America and then dying around 1712 in Prince George County, Virginia. Then they had a daughter who was named after her mother, and her name was Wellesley Burtis, born 1653. Then they had a daughter named E-M-M. I don't know if that's short for Emma, born 1654. Then they had a son named James, born 1656. Then they had another son, born 1657 and died 1658. Now there was another one that died in infancy. Then their last child that was born was in 1659. They would face a lot of hardships from these sicknesses and diseases that was around at that time. London, they even said, was not even a clean environment to live in at that time. After their last child was born, who was Mary, born in 1659, I cannot find no more records of Wesley Burtis having children. Can't even find as far as even a death time. You know, she might have died from childbirth or some kind of disease that was rampant in London, you know, during this period that I talked about. So Wesley Burtis, the mother of all these children, the wife of James, possibly died 1659 or 1660. It was that year, 1660, that John the immigrant made it out of London to America. His father, like I said before, probably saw, and knew how bad it was and wanted to get him out of there. So, but the rest of the children, I can find no record of them. John could have been and possibly was the last son to survive. James needed a male child to carry on his name. That could have been one of the biggest reasons to get him out of there. Then James, who was the father of all these children, would die in 1669. It was around that time that the Great Plague would hit London from 1665 to 1668. And he possibly could have died from this disease the following year. You know how these sicknesses, just like COVID-19, sometimes they want to linger around and they have all these variances, that pop up, here and there. And this happened, and James died approximately about 8 years after John had made it to America. This James Douglas's parents were William Douglas, who was my 10th great-grandfather. And his wife and his mother was Marie Parker. So James's parents was William Douglas and Marie Parker. William Douglas would move to London in the Westminster Parish, St. Margaret Westminster Parish. He would move there from Henley-on-the-Thames, Oxfordshire, England, around 1640. William Douglas and Marie Parker would marry on May the 8th, 1642. Henley-on-the-Thames, the Thames is the river, is only approximately 33 miles from London, England. They would have these children in Westminster, London, England. They had a son named Thomas who was born 1612. Then they had a son named Richard who was born 1614. Then a son named James who was born 1616, and he died 1619. He died in infancy. Then a son named William, born 1618. Then James, who was my 9th great-grandfather, he was born 1620 and died 1669. Then they had a son named Thomas, born 1621, and he died 1622. He was only a year old, died in infancy. A lot of infant deaths. I mean, it was just tragic. So, William Douglas would die on May the 21st, 1659. You could find this in the St. Margaret Westminster Parish area records. So he died there in Westminster. But William, and I'm going back in time now. William was born at Henley-on-the-Thames in Oxfordshire, England area to a man named Jacobi. And you can see some of the records where his name was James. Now, Jacob in the Bible is actually the Old Testament name for James, like the New Testament. So you'll see him also as James in some of the Henley-on-the-Thames Oxfordshire records. So he would marry a woman named Anne Tuilo. And she was the daughter of Richard Tuilo. And you can even find this name also come up as far as Tull. It's just sometimes the spelling or the way people was writing down, records, the way people was given their name, the way that they spoke. So this sometimes, you kind of have to decipher through some of these names. But her father was named Richard. So this is where I'm going back as far as the Jacobah and Anne Douglas in Oxfordshire. They're on Henley-on-the-Thames, Thames River. Their children would be Humphrey, who was born in 1569, Martha, born in 1572, Margaret, who was born in 1574, Robert, born 1575, and he died 1639. Then William was born 1578 and died 1626. They had two Williams. Sometimes they just, and they did this in record in their family. Sometimes they would have two sons and they would name them William. Then the next one, who was my 10th great-grandfather, his name was William also. He was born 1580, died 1659 in Westminster, London, England area. Then he had a son named John, born 1583. Now, Jacobah, Douglas, and Anne Tuilo, they married, and I'm going back, I forgot to give you this record. They married on April the 27th, 1567, there in Henley-on-the-Thames, and the name of the parish was St. Mary in Oxfordshire, England. I believe Jacobah moved there from Halifax, St. John the Baptist, Yorkshire, England. Yorkshire is in northern England down to southern England. And he moved there, I believe, with his father, who would actually die there on May the 26th, William Douglas, who was the father of Jacobah. He would die there in Oxfordshire, and there on Henley-on-the-Thames. And his mother's name was Alice. Jacobah's mother's name was Alice, and she would die there at a real early time in December the 3rd, 1558. Then Jacobah, he would die in that parish there in Oxfordshire, Henley-on-the-Thames, in the St. Mary Parish Church, probably buried there in that cemetery in an unmarked grave. And his wife Anne, Jacobah would die November the 5th, 1597, and Anne would die somewhere around 1604 because they have probated her will that year. Somewhere around 1603, 1604, Anne, who was the mother of these children in Oxfordshire, she would die. As I said earlier, Jacobah was born January the 10th, 1545, in Halifax, St. John the Baptist, Yorkshire, England, in the northern part of England, to William Douglas, and his wife was named Alice. Last name, maiden name is unknown. William Alice would have these children: Agnes, born 1540. Now I want you to keep up with some of these names, because when we go into Scotland, a lot of these names would kind of, I reckon, be sort of hereditary or be passed down from one generation to the next. I say hereditary, they did it because, it was their family, these family first names. Agnes was born 1540. She married a man named John Smith. Then they had a daughter named Alice, born 1542, and she married a man named James Barrett on October the 27th, 1566, after they got as far as the Henley-on-the-Thames, Oxfordshire, England. This William Douglas, who was my 12th great-grandfather, was born to a man, now get this, Jacobus. So I believe that is where that William wanted a name as far as his son, and we only got one record of one son. There could have been possibly other children, and they probably were, but we don't have no records. Those records are lost. So his father's name was Jacobus. And like I said, I believe that that's where that Jacobi got as far as his name. So William Douglas's father, Jacobus, would die in Halifax, St. John the Baptist, Yorkshire, England. I'm trying to give you all these parishes and these names. And he was buried there in Halifax, St. John the Baptist, Yorkshire, England, on January the 8th, 1540. There is no more record for Jacobus in Yorkshire, England area. Yorkshire is located in northern England area, like I said earlier, near the border of Scotland. We will find out in our next video that there is a lot of border wars between Scotland and England, and this Douglas clan would come in and out of Scotland into northern England at different times, and we'll talk about that in our next video. And even some of them would die in Northumberland. And, England was broke up in, different divisions. You had Mercia, you had Northumberland, you had Wessex, and I know that there was other, can't remember all as far as those kingdoms, so to speak, until they were united. So, this is why that I believe that Jacobus ended up in England, because of this family coming in and out from Scotland into England during these periods of time. Now, Jacobus would not hold any title of nobility. When we go back, or when we go into Scotland, and I'll begin to talk about as far as the Douglas family in Scotland, you're going to see the titles of nobility. You're going to see the titles of these lords over these areas. They would hold these, but Jacobus, he did not hold any title at all. But a lot of Douglas family researchers have come to this conclusion that Jacobus was an illegitimate son of Sir William Douglas. Here we go. Now he's got a title. Sir William Douglas, the 6th Earl of Drumlanrig, Scotland. And to prove that I descended, and not only me, but I know several other Douglases have descended from the Drumlanrig, Scotland Douglas clan. That is where my Y-DNA goes back to. Y-DNA is the male bloodline. And it's only in the male bloodline, that Y-DNA. And I've taken that test, and so I am a part of the Queensberry, what they call Queensberry, Drumlanrig, Scotland, Douglas clan. So right now, thinking about it, I could hear those old bagpipes sounding out as far as on our journey. And we're nearing as far as the Scotland border right now. And in our next video, we're going to be taking a look at the Douglas family in Scotland. I'm going to be taking us back to 1146, where the first man took on the Douglas name, and his name was William D. Douglas, D.E., otherwise William of Douglas. The Douglas name comes from the Gaelic term Dubglas, which means black water or dark streams. That's where I get my, as far as website, I entitled it Dark Stream, the Douglas family story. The name Douglas means black water or dark stream. So you could just Google this if you want to. I need to give you as far as those my whole website as far as letters and name. But all you got to do is just Google Dark Stream at Wixsite.com, and maybe you could come up with it, and I got a lot of this information there. So, and this derives, that name Douglas, that name derives from lands. surrounding the Douglas Water. There's like a stream, like a little small river called the Douglas Water in South Lanarkshire, Scotland. Said, it has been said, men have seen the stream, but what eye ever beheld the source? It has also been said, and I know I've seen this in people that is written down as far as the histories of Scotland and told the stories, said it has been said that most of Scotland's history could not have even been written down if it wasn't for the Douglas clan of Scotland. The Douglas family was one of the most powerful families in Scotland. And in our next video, we will show this to be the fact when we talk about the Douglas family in Scotland. If you would, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. I mean, this would help us out. Please share this. If you need help in your family history, if you see something in these videos that I have put out, and we started as far as we even with the Douglases of the Okefenokee Swamp, and that's in South Georgia. Then I went as far as the Douglas family in Georgia is one of my other videos. Then we done the Douglas family in North Carolina. Then the Douglas family in Virginia. And the one we're doing today is the Douglas family in England. And I hope you have enjoyed this. Like I said, make a comment. If you want to even send me as far, a question by my email. My email, this is all small case letters, is SILASDOUGLAS 4058 at yahoo.com. Give us a thumbs up today if you don't mind. Make a comment. Our comments are open, but like I said, we need you to subscribe. I hope that you have enjoyed this today. Like I said, follow us on this journey. This journey, it's going to go back, almost in around the 700s and 800s. I'm going to go back even when this Douglas name actually starts. And there looks like there's another family, but I believe it's the same family. So go with this journey with me. And until next time, thank you for listening to us today.